And that's comrades. This is the Chief Guard of the Republic radio show with your co-hosts Mike Tuman and Paul Burvid. And today, a very special guest, one of our co-hosts, Marla. Thank you, Marla, for being here. We are on every Saturday, noon to 1. Today, noon to 2. Due to the Sox game, we fill in some of that dead air space that the Sox leave at 1 hour. We're off of WRMN 1410. Of course, you know that because you're here. The Fox River Valley Media Network. We're streaming on WRMN1410.com. Go to their website, WRMN1410.com, and either hit the YouTube button or you could hit the Listen Live button. Studio call numbers are 847-931-1410. The text number is 505-926-1410. Or you can hit us up on the YouTube Live comments. So, Paul, they just had a couple commercials on like cybersecurity leaks, which was something I was going to get into with artificial intelligence and machine learning. But, Marla, one of the things, just recently we had a contest, an oratory essay contest for the American Legion. And I had the honor of reading 100 and something essays and deciding which one was going to be the winner of the contest. And one of the things I noticed right away was most of the essays were artificial intelligence. I mean, someone put their subject in and copied and pasted it out of Google or wherever and put it into essay format. So as a professor, Marla, do you see that being an ongoing problem in academia?
I noticed that with my own students, you could tell sometimes if the writing is different, if they copy and paste or, copy and paste different sections, for example, in a document. And I learned the old way. Probably you did too, Paul, where we would just, think about what to write. But if it's a problem or not, it depends on who the audience is. I think that sometimes, for example, in the classroom, teachers just want you to get the student to get the information, and however they get it legally, obviously, is okay.
Yeah,
so personally, I don't like it because I think one of the reasons people are in school is they're trying to better themselves and be able to go out into the world and function well, and be able to articulate and whatever. And I think if you're doing everything with the touch of a button, it's a problem. But do the schools care? There's plagiarism tools. There's all kinds of what software people can use. But I have noticed it, yes. And I've noticed it recently in the last year. I don't like it personally.
There's also another impact to this too. A lot of times, it's my understanding from what people tell me, because I have a lot of teachers in my family, they don't use proper grammar. They're using it as bullet points, and they get away with having to form grammatical sentences. Yeah. And it's almost like you're reading it off of, like Wikipedia. And there's bullet points, and then there's just a statement. And they get away without having to make that bridge and doing creative writing that way.
And I actually teach communications, one of the topics I teach, but I think it depends if we're talking about the classroom environment, how the instructor frames a question. So you want to maybe add something that they have to think about. It's not just all going to be off the internet.
Yeah,
ideally you get information and then you want to put it in your own words. But you're both right. People are not all doing that, and it does bother me, and I don't think it's right.
I think it's also important to bring up as part of the assignment something that was only discussed in class.
Something unique.
So that it requires them to actually have some critical thinking and input besides going to a AI source,
Didn't you tell me some things don't carry over, Paul, though? Like certain pieces, like a picture or something, hands don't move, or so you said.
Well, in the AI, I've noticed that because I've watched a lot of, they can't get the hands correctly, and then sometimes a hand will come out of their forehead, right? Or they, you'll see they put gloves on them because they can't do the hands. Everything else is great, but they can't do the hands, or a hand comes out of the head.
So I'm not big into the programming and everything, and into all the coding that makes that. But they put in for these AI generated photographs, and they look a lot like people, and they'll actually take real people. They'll go out in the database and they'll search out this type of person, right? Blonde female. So they'll search out and they'll find some of the most popular ones, and then they'll extrapolate, take that person and remove everything else from the picture. And they're looking for certain outlines. And sometimes someone else's arm will be in that outline, and it'll just cut it, and that arm will remain there like it's coming out of someone's shoulder. I could see all that stuff. And that's easy. That's great. That makes it easy to spot. And like when we were going through one of my last Army courses, like the highest level warrant officer course, you get the Warrant Officer Senior Staff Education, or WASI, and they would give you a subject, or you would select a subject that you wanted to write on, and then when you sent it into them, they would put it through the plagiarism program. So they bought a plagiarism program, and if you were above like 30% plagiarism, they'd bounce it back to you and make you do it again. Because what was happening back in the day is one soldier would write a paper, it would be pretty good, and then he would will that paper down to the next person in line to go to that school. And that person would bring that paper and submit the exact same paper. You know, and the instructors are turning over like every 3 years too, so you don't have a good, you know, a guy with the long memory that's saying, hey, I remember this from last month or whatever, and catching it. So now everything's submitted digitally, you know, so in Word, so it's easier to submit and all that stuff. But that's on the high level, at the highest level. And by that time in the military, with all the training that you have, you should be able to write some sort of coherent paper to transmit your thoughts on a subject to your supervisor. But apparently, at every level you go to, they're giving you the same training because someone has squeaked through and not been able to do that as of yet.
Well, you have to look at why you're using the tech tool, the technology. It's supposed to enhance what you're doing, not just do it for you.
Yes, it's great to be able to search Google, to search Wikipedia and everything, and to read that and to say, oh, and then to put it together in your brain and say, well, this is what it means to me, and then regurgitate it out and place it on the paper in your own language, you know, in colloquial speech or in a flowing speech. One of my friends said, when I write my books, he says, you write exactly like you talk. And a lot of people are highly trained in journalism. They're highly trained in the English language, and they're very perfect in their speech. They don't end sentences in prepositions. So, you know, they could take offense to that style of writing. My mother does. She was a legal clerk for years before she became a lawyer, and she really can take offense to it. And I'm like, Ma, it's not a mistake, it's my style. That's like an author's privilege there when you're writing for yourself. But all right, so when it comes to that, and everything's now like in a database, and you're searching for stuff with plagiarism, it's like, where are these databases being stored? Who has access to them? I mean, who has control over them?
Well, the search engine, Google has the Google stuff, right? And
you know, you run into a problem with that, though, because a lot of major universities and stuff like that, they have banks, like dissertation banks or brief banks, or law firms have a brief bank where you've used the same argument in the past, and law review articles and things like that. And that poses an interesting thing with study guides and things like that too, because many authors write books on the same subject, and the information is the same in all of them, yet they didn't plagiarize each other. So, like there's so many, like say, for instance, when you're talking about fingerprints, there's a tented arch, or there's a swirl, or there's a reverse loop. So when you read criminology books about training criminologists, they all have the same information. So it's really not plagiarizing per se, because there's only so many ways that you could call it a tented arch or a swirl or a reverse loop, or an anomalous line. So I mean, it presents a problem in certain areas, but not in others. And like I said, a lot of law firms, they would have what they call the brief bank. And then you would go, whatever the subject was, there would be a brief in there that was already done, and you'd have to look up the modern, to follow the cases. But, that doesn't mean somebody's plagiarizing something if it's general and common knowledge. And that's a problem I have with the AI stuff, because a lot of it is still general and common knowledge. So there's only, like if you were talking about, I think it was July 15th, 1776 was when Custer was killed at the Little Bighorn.
1876.
What was it?
1876.
I mean, 1876. So there's only so many things you could talk about, Reno Ridge, or this or that. So if you're writing about it, it's all been written before, but you didn't necessarily plagiarize it. You may have used primary sources and things like that.
But you need to cite the source.
Well, you do, but I mean, you can't cite everything because it was a historical event and it happened.
Yeah. Now, what Marla said is you need to check your sources, and not just check your sources, check the sources, and then check the sources of the sources, and then even check further back than that. One of the things that just happened is, I guess, there I failed again with my ums. Just recently, our vice president had applied for a membership in Twitch or one X.
TikTok or something?
He applied for a thing and they blocked him. They blocked the sitting vice president of the United States because they said it was possibly a person trying to set up a fake address. All right, a fake, like if someone tried to set me up and put in a fake YouTube page about me and do all sorts of crazy stuff, and then people took that as legitimately my point of view, right? So they used the excuse that they were trying to prevent that, but they opened up his account again. And then, now I'm getting back. There's a social media influencer or a blogger. He's a blogger, and he goes by the moniker of Cat Turd. And one of the person had asked the X's, or what is it, Grok? Grok is run by X, the artificial intelligence, and artificial.
Grok 3. Grok 3.
Yeah, and it came back with a lot of bad stuff on them, which and it cited its sources as like Rolling Stone and some other magazine. That's what, when the person asked why the Grok 3, why did you say this? And it says it cited those sources. And then immediately Elon comes up and he says, we're reprogramming you because those aren't reliable sources. Now the sources aren't citing their sources. Back in 2002, we were asked to do a dirty net. That's the new word for open source, because open source means something totally different now. But a dirty net analysis about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And I don't want to get into why, I don't want to get into whether they were there or they weren't there, all right? But it was behooving to us in Iraq, it behooving to the administration that people were to believe that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, that Saddam Hussein was creating or about to create or already had weapons of mass destruction, and he was going to use them, which he had used before. He used them against the Iranians and he used them against the Kurds. That is not a point of contention. That's actual fact. Right? But they said he was out of them, that, you know, Bush lied, people died. That immaterial to that, we were asked to do a dirty net analysis of that. And our analysis went back, not only did we take these sources off the dirty net, which would be this magazine, this newspaper, this interviewer, this article, this, you know, all these papers written by people, and it all came back to one guy that used to be on Saddam Hussein's team, but then he got caught stealing from Saddam, so he fled to France and hooked himself up with the NATO people, and he was telling the NATO people exactly what they wanted to hear because he knew what they wanted to hear. No one checked whether he was lying or not. They took his word as gospel. And then he was quoted by a magazine, and then other magazines quoted that magazine, and then it became circular logic. It was all circular logic. And when we dug down deep enough, we said all these sources come back to one person who has every reason to lie to us and really no reason to tell us the truth. So,
well, wasn't that also complicated by the fact that Saddam Hussein told his own generals he had these weapons of mass destruction?
well, he did have them. He used them against the Iranians and the Kurds. That's,
right, but even to the end, he told them he still had more of them, and they believed him.
okay, so going around in circle here, now what you have is the U.S. government doesn't care. They don't care whether this guy is telling the truth or not. Well, the regime, this is, again, this is my opinion. This is my opinion and my analysis. But it benefited them because now it was in the press. It was in the press that, oh, big danger, weapons of mass destruction, killing and everything. And it gave them impetus to go in there a second time and to end this guy's regime. It gave them the impetus they needed. So they didn't, they didn't contradict what this guy was saying. No one had the motivation to come out and say, hey, this all goes down to one guy, right? And there was no listening to us as we dug down to that. But that's a question for a different day with that stuff. But the thing is, when you get with artificial intelligence, is, okay, what is artificial intelligence using for its source? Because if you have artificial intelligence and the most popular answer to the question, what is 2 + 2, you do a survey of 100 people, right? What is 2 + 2? And 99% of the people say 5. And you ask artificial intelligence what 2 + 2 is, it goes back to those 100 people and it says, oh, 2 + 2 is 5 because they say it is. Not 4 because it's artificial intelligence. It's not computing. It's not computing. It's not doing mathematical processing.
Right.
It's okay. So one of the things also, like Bitcoin harvesting, right? People that are mining Bitcoin and with the cyber coins, any cyber coin out there, and the mining of those. And what they're doing is they have this very complicated blockchain processing that requires an answer. And to have these computers do all the processing to find this answer takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time. It's actually easier for the computers to just guess the answer, to randomly millions of times a second, guess, take a guess. And it's better if you have a lot of processors, a lot of computers working in conjunction, making different guesses all at the same time. When they guess right, they get a Bitcoin, all right? So they're not actually mathematically processing this. They are just guessing. That's a form of artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence goes there, and what's the most popular answer? Boom, that's my answer, whether it's correct or not. It doesn't go back and double check itself with actual mathematical processing, because it's not it's a database search engine, not a mathematical processing engine. So am I making sense there?
You are.
Yeah. So in that point, artificial intelligence is not gospel. It's not already correct. But the danger of it, the most dangerous thing of it, is the same thing that guy from the 1930s on to, like, I think he was finished by 1945. I'm not going to mention his name. I'm not going to give him the credit for any of this. If you scream the lie loud enough and long enough, it becomes the truth. But it's still a lie.
Corporal from World War I.
No, that was the previous. No, one of his sidekicks, not the corporal.
Okay.
One of his sidekicks died with him in bunker. I'm pretty much sure, but not gonna mention his name. Don't care, you know.
Okay.
But yeah, he was propaganda and psychological operations, and that's what we're here on the show to say. It's like you hear a lot of lies or a lot of things being screamed out there loud enough, a lot of panic stuff to put you in fear. But if you take a deep breath and you dig down a little bit and you think on your own, one of two things comes up. Either you say that's not true, or possibly there's another answer. So you can't prove it's absolutely untrue, but there's enough space, reasonable doubt out there to allow you to have another answer. And I think
I would say have more than one contingency if possible.
yes. And when we get back, I think we're going to talk a little bit about that. And Paul, probably one of your, when it comes to this artificial intelligence and its use and probable cause in the Fourth Amendment. So I think when we come back from break, we'll talk about that, because that's where I think it seriously gets, it's the most serious threat to our day-to-day life.
And I'd also like to talk about drones too.
Yes, we got 2 hours, so we're a quarter way into it.
We actually, sorry.
We have to.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Go
We have
ahead.
a White Sox game at 1:30.
Oh, it's 1:30?
Yep.
Oh, so we're done, right? Except for we're done broadcasting
Until about 1:30.
until about 1:30. All right, yeah,
One more hour.
yeah, we're good to 1:30. So we'll talk about drone. We'll bring drones up as
We
close
have
as
some
possible.
interesting insight into the drone thing.
Yep, I had a nightmare about it last night, and
Okay. Then you must have been watching what we were doing.
okay. Please do. Tonight over at Schiller Park at 4501 on 25th Avenue, doors open 5 o'clock, and doors open at 5 o'clock. The movie starts at 6. We will be showing Operation Petticoat on the big screen in the Schiller Park Community Center. $5 entry fee to get in. There'll be snacks and drinks available for a donation. We're running a 50-50, and this is the fundraisers that we do throughout the year to try to keep our post going. It's a great post, Post 104, American Legion, Schiller Park. So, Paul, one of the things that, let's go right, you seem pretty excited about the drones. We can come back to the,
Yes.
Yeah, you know, when we talked about this and when we talked about Marla was coming on, you know, I did some searching into this, and you know, it's kind of interesting because yesterday, Louisiana was the first state in the United States to authorize its police to shoot down drones for public safety. And it's called the, quote, "We Will Act."
nice.
And that got me, that got me,
We will do it.
that got me kind of interested in this. So, you know, and we were talking about drone swarms and the effect of this. Well, you know, Illinois, most drone laws are governed by the federal government.
The FAA.
And it's governed by Part 107, okay? And there's two types of drone users. There's drone users that are commercial, and then there's drone users that are hobbyists, okay? And it's funny because if you're a real estate broker and you take drone views over the house, that makes you a commercial pilot. So you have to get it under Part 107. So you would not believe what a wonderful setup they have. So actually, Marla and I last night took the FAA test.
Nice.
And I want to tell you that we are both licensed recreational drone users as of last night.
Nice.
And you get a number, and then if you have a drone that weighs over 0.55 of a pound, you then get an FAA number like an airplane, and then you have to write it on the outside of your drone. Now, because we're recreational users, we can fly drones up to 400 feet, and it could be now you have to be careful because like we live near an airport, our houses are near an airport, so you have to watch out. But you also have to monitor, and you get an access then to the federal government in case the president flies in or in case there's a military reason. So that would limit your drone flights. And then if you're using virtual drone, with goggles, you still have to have a person with you that's also a drone pilot that has to keep their eyes on the drone at all times. And it's fascinating. It's a test designed by the FAA, and I took it on my phone. They ask you about 30 questions, and then if you pass it, then you're issued the certificate, and you have a drone operator number and everything. And it's kind of cool. Well, in Illinois, other than the federal regulations, all matter regarding drones is regulated by the state. And with the exception of a population area with more than 1 million people. So in Illinois, to fly a drone as a government employee in the state, like for police or fire, you may either operate under 107 or obtain a federal certificate of authorization. Now, the Illinois state drone laws, these laws apply to the entire state of Illinois. The law loosens the regulations around law enforcement's use of drones during a disaster or public health emergency, and it creates regulations for how law enforcement can obtain and use information gathered from a private party's use of drone. The law also requires Illinois law enforcement to get a warrant to compel third parties to share their information, and if the information is voluntarily given to the police, they are required to follow the state's law governing drone data retention, which means that they can only hold it for 30 days unless a supervisor says there's a reasonable suspicion that it contains evidence of criminal activity.
See, now my brain has already shot holes in this. So those Illinois lawmakers, I don't know if they actually went to law school or not, or if they have anyone on their staffs that went to law school or actually argued any cases. Because one, you just say that I need a warrant to get it from a third party unless they give it to me voluntarily. All right. So that's like they were encroaching on someone else's privacy. What I believe, right? You have a right to privacy. They were encroaching on someone else's privacy. I, as the federal government, could not get a warrant to encroach on that person's privacy. But I know that this other person, roofing company, real estate company, all right, was flying over, and they may have got the house next door, but that's going to be a collateral that they'll get the house I'm looking for. So I'm going to want something on the roof there or something in that house's backyard that I can't see because there's a 10-foot fence, which implies my right to privacy. I put up a 10-foot fence. I want privacy. So now I asked this roofing company, and the roofing company doesn't ask me for a warrant because under color of law and intimidation, I tell them they just have to give it to me. And they give it to me, quote, voluntarily. Now I have circumvented the need for law enforcement to get a warrant. Because
Right.
I didn't have enough evidence, I didn't have enough probable cause or reasonable suspicion to articulate to a judge, but I went around the thing. Maybe I called the neighbor and I says, hey, don't you want to have a free roof inspection? Oh, because they were coming around after that hailstorm. All these guys were coming around. Hey, I'm going to be in here with drones. You want a free roof inspection? So I could see that. Joe Layman here, never went to law school. Okay, I was a detective, right? Military intelligence. I have some learning ability, and we've looked into the Constitution and everything. But I have already found multiple loopholes to that. So how does that protect our Fourth Amendment rights?
It doesn't. That's why if they do that, the best possibility would be for them to get a warrant to secure the images.
And we've already said that, you see, for them, right? Now I would
still get the warrant and serve it on the company.
You would.
Yeah.
All right, you would. But what if you weren't able to articulate enough to get the warrant?
Well, the exception to that would always be like a kidnapping or where, something like that, you would want to get it. It's just like the voiceover hears of the past and stuff like that. If you know it's happening right now, you don't have time to get it.
Yes, that is an exception. Hot
Right.
pursuit.
So I would treat it the same way.
Extreme circumstances.
Right. I would get a warrant as soon as I could to preserve the validity of the information, because it is dangerous and it does encroach on privacy rights.
Yeah, but the way that law was written and the way I poked a hole in it, what you would do as a competent prosecutor, right, as a competent law enforcement and a competent person who studied the Constitution, right, what you would do and what some nefarious people in the law enforcement community and the prosecution community may do are two different things. So you're leaving it open, and I'm going to say, yeah, there are some bad apples out there that won't, their glory is above and beyond your civil rights.
That's true.
All right, so that's what I'm afraid of, because I've ran into a lot of them. Of them.
You're exactly right, and the competent, prudent one will follow the steps as soon as he can to preserve it, and then still get a judicial retention order.
So now, here's the thing. Now the people that aren't as ethical, they get this evidence, they get this the evidence of what I consider the fruit of the poison tree, right? The poison fruit of the tree there, because it was poisoned by the lack of a warrant. But I have to go all the way into court. I have to get a defense attorney. I have to pay money. Possibly some of my property has been seized. Everything's been seized. And I get to court, and it gets all thrown out. And where do I get my reputation back? Where do I get my money back? Who's paying for my defense attorney? No, I've already been punished.
Correct.
I've already been punished. That's what scares me. And they go, here's the people that say, and where we're talking about judicial accountability, there's also that accountability unless you can prove malevolent prosecution, right? These guys go, oh, I made a mistake. I'm just human. And nothing happens to them. Yet they've ruined you.
That you are correct.
And that might have been their purpose in the first place, but now you got to go out, because they're not gonna arrest themselves. Hey, that was pretty crappy what I did. I should arrest myself and charge myself. Get one of my buddies here to prosecute me, because really, I should have known better. It's not going to happen. It's going to be up to you to go somewhere to find someone, right? and it's not going to happen. So, yeah, that's where I get with the drones is how easy it is. You know, it's not like a wiretap. It's not like the old hardline wiretaps that you needed, right? Or if you pull up cell phone conversations and everything, the judge is going to want to see that warrant. Oh, it was on the open airways. Now, anything I talk about on this radio station, they don't need a warrant for it. It's free and open, right? Whatever I say there, they've got it. But not when I got my closed circuit intercom system in my building that I only talk to one person at a time. That's my right to privacy. If someone's listening in on that and I'm not aware of it, they need a warrant for that. All right, so we're coming up on another break. Man, when I get excited, man, the time just flies by. And
We could do a break, or we could just continue on until 1. It's up to you.
Are we going off the air at 1?
1:30.
No.
1:30.
Yeah, that's when the game
Oh
starts.
no, let's go to 1. Let's go. Okay. Marla, what are your thoughts about someone flying over your house and looking at everything in your backyard?
Well, I'm careful what I have available.
Yes.
I don't want the thing to hit the house. That's or me or someone else, you know, or damage property.
We have a friend from church, though, that was denied homeowners insurance because the company, preemptively flew over her house to check the shingles. And they told her that if she didn't replace the shingles on her own, they were not going to insure her. So that creates one of these laws of unintended consequences where they force you to do something, because they flew a drone over it.
Yeah, when I went to get a VA loan for my house, they told me I had to paint the garage, scrape the paint and paint the garage. That was pretty quick,
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was their inspection. That's what they found on the inspection.
Was that because of a drone?
No, the drones weren't very common back then.
Yeah.
Now they're very common. That's like anything. And what scared me, I'm writing a sequel to one of my books. I Married a Bot Madam. It's going to be called Daughters of Bot Madam. And one of my characters is of course, friend, the artificial intelligence. And which she's not just an artificial, she's sentient. There's a difference between just AI and sentience, right? So she has a form of sentience in that she writes her own protocol. She writes her own
Program?
algorithms, like if this, then that, or this is how to do that. And she puts together subroutines. And then she writes subroutines for the subroutines. And then she puts all the subroutines together and makes a subroutine out of that. So she can accomplish tasks faster. She just hits that subroutine. A lot of times in computer programming, there are subroutines that call up a whole program that do that for you, like the mathematical, it's all subroutines. I was thinking about if you had enough lightweight drones flying up there, the thing is for each one's got to have a control system, right? A human control system that's looking at that, that's flying it, that's directing it. Otherwise, it has to have its own AI, and it has to have its own set of algorithms on what to do, what to look for. But if I'm looking for something, I could identify that without all those algorithms. And I could pretty much keep my eye on maybe 4 cameras at once, maybe 4 cameras, but I can't fly 4 at once. I would need 3 other guys flying these things. And then when I point out a target, then we hit a target and I lose one of the drones. But if you're able to shut down everything else that you're doing and just have access to hundreds of these drones, you can start raining death from the sky unannounced. Like you could be in a crowd and you can identify the threats in the crowd, and all of a sudden you're raining death on them individually, like something that just comes down. I don't want to say it on air. It's pretty bad, and I think ethically and morally, there's a way to do it, but I'm not going to tell you how to do it on the air because maybe someone might do it. It's like It's like publishing and handing out the anarchist cookbook. You know, you don't want to do that. There are some people that will just do it for kicks. And there are ways that scares me, that stuff, because my training and what I see happening in warfare, the current state of warfare with the drones and everything, that's scary. Now, when you create a weapon like that, you got to create a counter weapon. And one of the things is drones, of course, are solid state technology, because if it was all electric technology, it would weigh too much to control, to fly. Right? So all the gyroscopes to keep the thing balanced, and the camera in there to look, and the control of the motors for directional control, those are all little microprocessors. If you hit those with an EMP or with the directed electromagnetic wave large enough, you can down them. They'll just go down. They'll just go down. Or if they're being controlled by radio waves, much like the RC, radio-controlled planes, if you jam those radio frequencies, you can't fly them within that jamming area. But, of course, you're using the same frequencies on your drones, so you're denying your drones. So basically you're saying you're denying all the drones in the area. But they came up with an alternate to that. They use wire-guided. So they have very thin wires, like a tow missile, and they send all the information. All the information comes back on these wire-guided. So they go out a couple kilometers away from where they're being used, and the radio jamming has no effect on them. Or one of the things I saw was they would intercept drones. So you got a radio-controlled drone coming over, and this guy, he has a more powerful transceiver, and he intercepts your drone, takes it over, switches it to go back home mode, and it goes back home and blows itself up. You know? So there's counters to these things, but not everyone is walking around with one. But if enough of they're cheap. They're cheap. You know, they're going. It's a hobby, right? These guys flying the drones, radio control airplanes, it's a hobby. Imagine if they had to defend their hobby like Second Amendment people have to defend their firearms.
That's how it should be.
It should, because it's scarier. It's scarier. I have to, you know, with a small arm, with a handgun, right? I would have to be within range, seeing range, right? Unless I'm just praying and spraying. But if I really want to do harm to someone, I have to be within 10, 20 feet. Like they say, the average police shooting is at 7 feet. And if people in a panic trying to hit a target beyond 20 feet, they're not all John Wick out there. You know, it's, you know, you have to be a good, steady shot to hit these things.
I see a new sport.
What?
Drone skeet shooting.
Drones what?
Drone skeet shooting.
Drone skeet shooting, yes. Now, there are weapons being developed to specifically deny drone. You know, if you get drone within sight, it's small. It's a small target, so you got to be a good shot. So the best thing to do is just put up enough lead. You know, but the lead's going to come down somewhere. That drone's going to come down somewhere. But hopefully it's in small enough pieces and traveling at a less velocity to cause enough damage. But the idea that anyone could go out and buy, does it say when you go to buy a drone at Amazon that you have to have the license that you and Marla acquired?
Any drone since 2022, any drone since 2022 that weighs more than 0.55 pounds has to have a radio identification transceiver on it. And if you have an older drone, that's part of the law. If you have an older drone, you have to retrofit it with a radio transceiver, which would then broadcast to planes and the FAA who's the drone pilot and where it's at.
Yes.
And it would give them the height and the velocity.
But how would they know?
Do you think Amazon would say, "Hey, where's your FAA? You got your certificate through the FAA, right?"
Yes.
All right. Where's your FAA certificate? Before mail it to us, with a copy of your driver's license, and then we'll proving who you are, and then we'll send you the drone.
I think when you initiate them, it requires you to put your number in there
Okay,
before, otherwise they won't work.
all right. The,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think you have to input your number in there before. I mean, that's at least since 2022.
but we're talking about commercially built drones now.
Yeah, well, any drone, even the ones they sell on Amazon, are supposed to have the transceiver in them.
Unless they're less than half a pound.
Right.
0.5, slightly more than half a pound. You know,
Correct.
about half a pound. But all you need is a half-pound drone to carry a small explosive charge.
That's true.
And it says the drone. It doesn't say it says the drone weight, not the not the net weight of the drone with the cargo.
That would include batteries, cameras, everything.
But not what it's carrying. Not what I taped to it.
Right. That's all included in that. It has to be less than a little more than half a pound.
Yeah. So they're making it so small there that they're thinking that it's not going to be a threat. But
Well, it would be to low-flying aircraft if it got ingested in an engine, but you know that's a whole other different story.
well, I'm talking threat to human beings.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, aircraft up there, that's one thing. But these things dropping. One of the things that scared me, and I was looking up something for a friend about the Wagner Group, all right? And I'm looking at videos of the beginning of the war in the Ukraine there, and they were just taking a drone and tying a grenade to it, a stick grenade. And when the drone would fly over a trench and would see someone down there, and they would just release the stick grenade and would pull the fuse, and when that grenade hit right on top of the people, ba-boom. You know, not artillery or anything. But that's just the over-the-counter drone. It is not anything specially military made. All right, so when we get back, I think I want to get into the we'll come first full circle with the drones and artificial intelligence. Want to read some action-packed, exciting pulp fiction? Read the works of Michael Tooman, now featuring the international crime thriller, I Married a